Good morning if you are in the United States, and good evening probably for those in Korea. I'm Moon-Sung Kim from State University New York, Brockport, who will kind of moderate this session today. Welcome to this beautiful joint session of two academic divisions of KOSCA, Division of Policing and Public Safety, and Division of Korean Community and Criminal Justice. In this roundtable today, we will address a critical topic called COVID-19 outbreak, police-citizen conflict, and police reform in the United States. 6 panelists from KOSCA and KAC are here to share their expertise. To run this session smoothly in a given time, we will have a brief presentation first from each panelist. Dr. In-Sun Park from University of Akron, Dr. Sung-Il Han from University of Louisiana, and Professor David Kim from Indiana University East, Dr. Jae-Sung Lee from Northern Kentucky University, and Dr. Hae-Young Lim from University of Alabama at Birmingham. After all presentations, Dr. Junhee Park from KIC, and I will raise some discussion topics. Please enjoy the presentation first. Thank you.
Hello, my name is In-Sun Park, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Akron. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this session on behalf of the KOSCA Division of Korean Community and Criminal Justice. The division currently consists of 8 people, and it was established to engage in research and community activities that improve the safety of Korean immigrants and nationals and other racial ethnic minorities in the United States. We are unfortunately still in a pandemic, and the pandemic has created a special concern for our division members and the members of this roundtable session because we've seen a spike in racism against Asians in the United States. The virus outbreak was identified to originate from a city in China. And from that notion, people who look like as Chinese or Asian, particularly Eastern Asians, were seen as a carrier of the virus. Combined with fear of the virus, people's frustration toward the situation was expressed as aggression against Asians living in the United States. According to a Pew study released in July this year, 58% of Asian American adults said they've seen an increase in racial slurs or incidents against them since COVID-19 began. And these incidents involve verbal harassment, such as calling Asian Americans as Chinese buyers, or vandalism or property damage targeting Asian businesses, and also include were physical aggressions that would qualify as hate crime. Anti-Asian racism has existed in the United States for a long time. It was historically done in the forms of vilifying Asian immigrant workers in the 19th century. Now it's being carried on in the forms of reducing Asians to always being foreign people and never considering them as real members of America. The pandemic has revealed such negative perceptions about Asians that has been hidden and existed in a more implicit way. And we could, as members of Asian community in the United States, and as scholars who study social conflicts and community relations, continue to pay attention on this matter and look to address the problem. The division members discussed about future actions and the suggestions that are particularly relevant for the topic of this roundtable session includes being aware that there is an increased concern for safety among Korean and other Asian immigrants and nationals in the United States, and it is necessary to assess if this has led to undermined trust between Asian American community and the criminal justice system. And as researchers, we could incorporate Asians as a meaningful racial category in relevant research areas, as opposed to considering them as a part of non-white or non-Black people. It is also necessary to expand mutual understanding and really educate the system. For example, this year on a crime reporting website for a police department in a medium sized city, the category to report hate crime incidents against Asians was termed as Oriental, which is a very outdated terminology. And some agencies in the community has advised the members of Asian community to do online reporting or to go directly to the police station rather than calling 911 into their community so that they can reduce direct contact with police within the neighborhood. Compared to racism against African Americans, racism against Asian people has received less attention. But the fact is that according to the census, Asian Americans has been growing faster than any other racial groups in the United States. And the situation is dire, but we could focus on the fact that this issue of anti-Asian racism has been brought up to the surface. And there's a long way to educate the system and people and maintain the momentum to raise awareness, understand the issue further, and address the problem from your immediate community or together by joining the division. Thank you again.
Hello everyone, I'm Song from University of Louisiana Lafayette. Today, I want to discuss policing in COVID-19 pandemic. Since the last winter, all over the world have experienced unprecedented life-threatening crisis, which is called COVID-19 pandemic. This virus killed more than many and brought dramatic changes in our life. Police officers, who are one of the first responders to the situation, often have a higher risk of getting infected as well. Furthermore, police are required to meet various demands and experiencing new kind of threat to each relationship with community, competence, and safety of each members. In this regard, this presentation will discuss the new responsibilities of police in the pandemic, as well as the barriers and the future directions for policing. In response to COVID-19, police are expected to play new roles, such as enforcing the new regulations about the social distancing or mandatory mask wearing. Also, new crime patterns force police to adapt new strategies to successfully keep the society safe and maintain the order. For example, rising rates of domestic violence captures attention from scholars and practitioners, and police are asked to deal with this rising crime with no new resources or strategies. Lastly, police are supposed to protect themselves not only from possible threat from the law enforcement activities, but also from the infection of virus. However, because of various reasons, some barriers and hurdles are also predicted. One of the primary challenges in the pandemic policing is maintaining relations with community while ensuring compliance with new regulations and restrictions. Because both citizens and officers are often under increased stress, police citizen encounters during this period of the crisis can be particularly challenging. Even police may face resistance of citizens against their activities, since enforcing the new regulation can be seen as community service, which does not have any authority. In addition, police department experienced increasing working load while staff shortage. Most of all, officers are likely to have fears of infection, stress, and critiques from public, media, and politicians. These potential stressors may undermine the performance and the motivation of officers. Then, how can you overcome those barriers and deal with the safety issues in the COVID pandemic? First, police are recommended to increase the effectiveness of police response. Police department and officers should change their policing styles and strategies to accommodate the different priorities, behaviors, and expectations of affected citizens and communities. Also, adequate training at departmental levels should be implemented, focusing on humanely treating affected persons, and awareness about the public health issues and occupational dangers. Also, in order to boost social support, police organizations need to actively utilize the online communication tools. In fact, over the last few years, police department has increasingly turned to online communication and social media to convey the message and respond to public inquiries. Lastly, police should take all the measures to protect its members from getting affected and harmed by doing their job. Of course, multi-agency collaboration to resolve the safety measures is strongly recommended. So let me conclude here. COVID-19 pandemic brought many changes in our life. Law enforcement activities need to change in response to new, various, and urgent demands from society. Two major findings came up. First, police still play a critical role to secure the society from crime and virus. But at the same time, police need to change its strategy, system, and policies to achieve its goal while protecting its members as well. This is the end of my presentation, and thank you for the listening.
Hi, my name is David Kim. I am currently a lecturer in criminal justice and Indiana University East. I wanted to discuss with you on the topic of media's relationship with the police and how media impacts citizens' perception of the police. Currently in our society, we tend to use or rely on various media sources, such as TV news, social media, or different types of media sources. And the purposes are for entertainment reasons or to find out what's going on currently in our society. Based on the information that we receive or obtain, we believe that all the information that we receive and obtain are credible and reliable. And because of this, we develop perspective views based on the information provided. And so the media has an important part on how we perceive diverse topics. There are two cases that are shown frequently in the media today, which is the COVID-19 pandemic and police brutality. Based on different news outlet sources such as AP News and Forbes, there's been an increase in TV viewership due to the depiction of these two types of cases. Based on the information, there's been a 61% increase in TV viewership for Fox, 40% increase for MSNBC, and CNN has a huge increase in viewership. Also, for police brutality, after the death of George Floyd, this increased viewership for Fox, MSNBC, and CNN. CNN had the highest TV ratings in 40-year history in a 3-month span due to COVID-19 pandemic and the George Floyd case. What this indicates is the media depicts or chooses cases that are controversial and or important to our community and society today. Choosing these topics or cases based on how much viewership that they could gain from it. Because for media, the number of viewership or percentage of viewership equals to the capital that they gain for themselves. Now, because of the media choosing specific topics, specific issues of what's going on in our society, this creates a strain with policing. In the history of policing and media relationship, there's been a lot of issues of how media chooses specific topics that portrays police officers negatively and how they choose specific topics that show police misconduct. There's not a lot of media portrayal of positive aspects of policing, of what's going on positively in policing, but more of what's going on negatively in policing, which creates the strain. And so, policing literature, a lot of police officers indicate that they are depicted incorrectly in the media, or the media chooses a specific clip of maybe like a 30-second clip of a 5-minute clip to show what occurred, but it doesn't show the whole picture. And so this creates a negative relationship with the police. The media also impacts citizens' perception of the police. age, political ideology, the amount of exposure, the amount of confidence in the media are all factors in changing a citizen's perception of the police. And so media has a lot of impact on citizen perception of the police. And this is a very controversial, this is not a controversial topic. This is a very interesting topic that's going on today. And a lot of research are being conducted on how social media has an impact or how it plays on the youth obtaining information of what's going on. And so if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm very vested into this topic and I really want to discuss this topic even further. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Lee. I'm an assistant professor in criminal justice at Northern Kentucky University. Today, I'm going to talk about the aspect of police-community relation in the United States. The relationship between police and community has been one of the important issues in policing in the United States since after police professionalism changed the aspect of American policing since from early 1900. During 1940 to 70s, there were lots of social movements and changes in the American society. And policing was the center in the social movement. Accordingly, through the several Supreme Court decisions, American policing was also reformed. And as a result, the new model of policing was emerged, what we call the community policing, which is stress out building a strong partnership with the community and problem solving throughout the partnership established and organizational transformation if the police department need to change their structure for successful integration of the community policing philosophy into their practices. So many of police departments actively adopted community policing philosophy since from 1980s, and 1990 was the peak. It has been more than 3 decades that community policing became a dominant policing philosophy. But as we see, United States societies are still experiencing big issues. Issues with the relationship between police and community, particularly George Floyd cases and other, police shooting cases during the past few months. And this pandemic situation became a trigger for people to request another reform of American policing to establish better relationship between police and community. As a community policing researcher, I strongly believe community policing can contribute to building a strong partnership with the community. However, what I found from my research is that the police actually failed to establish a communication channel and partnership with the people who can actually represent and address community problem properly to the police. In other words, during the past 3 decades, police only is successfully established and create a partnership and communication channel with a certain population who is not actually proper representative of their community. Now the United States societies are requesting another reform of American policing. So the way to establish a strong partnership with the representative population, which means who can properly and correctly represent and address the community problems to the police, should be primarily considered when reform is on the way. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Hae-young Lim at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. The topic that I discussed today is about the recent police reform movement in the United States. As other panelists provide all critical issue and aspect in American policing, I would briefly summarize the recent policing changes and effort, whether they work or not, and what else should be done at both the agency level and civil level for better policing and ensuring police accountability. I'm not sure whether you have heard about the Campaign Zero. Campaign Zero is an American police reform campaign launched in 2015. The campaign team proposed a policy solution for police reform in 10 areas, which include the training, of course, and then emphasizing citizen oversight, like community representation and community oversight, and end of broken window policing, which emphasize proactive policing than reactive policing, and also the militarization of the policing. You can see all of the 10 area on my background. So the team actually made a specific policy recommendation related to the police use of force. And then they actually tracked down how many police agencies had adopted those 8 recommendations. And then study found that 3 out of 8 recommendations had adopted by the average police department, but none of the agency had adopted all of the 8 recommendations. Those 8 recommendations, and you can see on my background, but I want to emphasize a couple of those recommendations. So I'm not sure whether you can see the recommendation about the use of a force continuum on my background or not, but one of their recommendation was establish a force continuum. But force continuum model was designed and established in 1978. The first time LAPD used it, and then FLAC at the same year. The FLAC also designed the force continuum model, and they used it for the training purpose. But since that time, they had received many complaints from practitioners about the use of force continuum model in the field. So in 2006, finally, FLAC no longer used the force continuum model for training purpose. So, and also the many agencies who already adopted the force continuum model, they just got rid of the continuum model from the Delta policy and procedure. But now, as you could see, they established a force continuum. At the time when the FLAC no longer used the force continuum models, my standpoint was, no, we have to continuously use force continuum model because they gave the basic idea to the police officer what level of force should be used to respond to the what level of resistance. So give some kind of basic guideline to the officer, but without it, it all depends on the individual officer, the discretionary decision making to use the force. So the other thing is having the citizen review board. We already knew many of the agencies have citizen review boards, which review all of the citizen complaint report and give the recommendation to the police agency. But a problem is the couple of the agencies have been evaluating the use of the citizen review board, whether it was successful or it was not. But recently I learned about the Austin Police Department. They said the use of a citizen review board was not very successful. One of the reasons was the citizen review board has no authority power to force the police agency to adopt their recommendation. So if the chief of police simply ignore the citizen review board's recommendation, nothing would be improved. No reform could be made. Another thing was training. As you know, every time we emphasize training, but problem is there is a rare case the training has been evaluated. We do not much focus on the what to train, how to train, who to train, whom to train, and never. Although those trainers are very qualified police officer who already have a state license or certificate to serve as a trainer, but a couple of the police officers could not cover all of the specific topic of the police training at all. So we have to also know about the quality of the training and then whether it worked or not. If the training didn't work, we have to figure out why that didn't work. So if we establish that kinds of policy and procedure or process and procedures, they evaluate those changes and run from the trial error, then we can make some change and improvement. Other than that, we would do no reform would work at all, or just a recommendation, ideally, not practically. So in this panel, I would learn more about the policy reform, what the other panelists think about it, and also I want to hear from the audience and their the view of the American policy reform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's beautiful, the great presentations. All these topics are interconnected each other to understand current situation of policing in the United States. Presenter probably in some park, provided kind of recent incident and concerns on racism against Asian American during COVID-19 pandemics, and also some possible future actions to address these issues as a researcher and also as a kind of community member. And also, Dr. Seung-il Han addressed some kind of new challenges and responsibilities of policing on the COVID-19 situation, and also some possible solutions to go through this COVID policing. Yeah, that is a great topic to handle. And Professor David Kim raised some issues of negative media portrayal of policing and also some media impact on citizens' perceptions about police. And that is also a timely topic to handle many issues. And also Dr. Jason Lee provided what we have achieved and what we have missed in our community policing in the last couple of decades. And he provided some brief overview of community policing. And lastly, Dr. Hae-young Lim provided some recent movement of police reform by providing several examples such as CRB, Civilian Review Board, and the use of force continuum issues. So all these topics are interconnected each other, and those topics have provided some timely implication on policing in the United States, and also left some rooms for further discussions. As you can see, we have discussed some United States experiences so far, but I believe Dr. Juni Park from KIC will add interesting perspectives on the current topic from Korean scholars' viewpoint. Do you want to share your thoughts with us, Dr. Park, if you're ready?
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, all honorable participants. I am Juni Park, the Director of Judicial Reform Research Division in KIC. Thank you all presenters for your excellent and outstanding presentation. As you know, the US research trends have a lot of influence on the Korean academia, and all 5 of the presentations are highly timely, which is expected to serve as a reference for Korean researchers. Professor Park, Professor Han, and Professor Lee have led the discussion from various perspectives regarding the recent issue of COVID-19. Professor Park discussed the racism against the Asian community. Professor Han talked about how to develop the police strategy responding to COVID-19. And Professor Kim talked about the strain between the media and police these days. All 3 topics are highly anticipated for further research. In particular, I strongly agree with all 4 strategies which Professor Han suggested. As you know, Korea is considered to have made a successful response to COVID-19. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, KDCA, has played a leading role in outbreak control, and the Commissioner of KDCA, Jeon Kyung, became a national hero. Not as much as KDCA, police also contributed to prevention of the spread through transfer of people into quarantine using police buses, the crackdown on the illegal sale of masks, and investigation of fake news. As a result, the credibility of the National Police Agency was ahead of both the prosecution office and the court in the criminal justice system. Last year, the National Police Agency strengthened the Situation Management Office. It's like a headquarters of a quick response team, which collected crisis information in various fields and presented prompt measures, and it is believed to have given it agility in responding to COVID-19. Based on the difference in the police system between Korea and United States, I would like to ask a question about the police reform in COVID-19 era. The United States and Korea sought to represent the municipal police system and national police system respectively. Recently, Korean government tried to change the current national police system to municipal police system. I believe that the increased credibility of the police and the success of responding to COVID-19 in Korea was possible due to the national police system. Based on your experience in the United States, I would like to hear from Professor Han. What do you think about this transition to the municipal police system in Korea? Then Professor Lee and Professor Lim discussed the police reform movement in the United States. Professor Lee assessed the US police has not been successful in terms of community policing, and Professor Lim seemed to think that there are some limits to reform the US police system, explained the Campaign Zero project case study. As far as you know, community policing works better on the decentralized organizational structure. However, even though the US police system is more decentralized than Korea police system, these community policing have been failed. I think it would be impossible to establish these community policing under the centralized national police system. In fact, Korea Police Agency has developed communication channels with the local community a lot compared to the past. I hope either Professor Lee or Professor Lim could answer the question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Park. He actually coined really interesting perspectives from Korean scholars' viewpoint. If I understand correctly, Dr. Park raised two questions. First question is, based on U.S. experience, how do you think about the recent movement of Korean National Police to adapt a municipal or local policing system? This question will be tossed into Dr. Han, Sung-il Han. And the second question is, he raised, if community policing in the United States, where more decentralized structures utilized, has experienced many challenges, how do you think to apply this community policing into Korean National Police, where much more centralized structures utilized? So for the first question, about municipal policing system, if Dr. Sung-il Han, if you are ready to answer, probably you can jump in anytime.
Hello, this is Sung-il Han, and I really thank for the comment and the questions. As Dr. Park stated, police system in the US pursued the decentralization, while the Korean police is viewed as holding centralized system. First of all, I totally agree on that. The recent successful response of the Korean police to COVID-19 pandemic is probably attributed to the centralized system. Since the decentralized system is well known for being appropriate to make a quick decision, for efficient organizational structure, and for balanced resource allocation. In fact, a line of studies argued that the interagency, the cooperation under the centralized system actually increased the performance of police agencies. I think the Korean police, the task force is the good example of that. However, as we have seen, various demands of the community in the COVID-19 pandemic to police or the police reform, such as the providing trainings for the dealing with patient, are not really new one. Police have faced calls for the highlighting the role of the problem solver through the community relations and involvement. Therefore, to successfully address and deal with this unexpected situation, I think the centralized system may look proper or work better at the first glance, but from the long-term view, the decentralized or the defederalized system may be more appropriate to build a solid environment for the successful policing. That's it. Thank you.
I'll probably answer for the second questions. First, thank you for your good comments and questions, Dr. Park. And also, I really appreciate Dr. Sung-Hilan for your well explanation about the difference between centralized and decentralized system. Regarding to the second question, in my opinion, the structural policing will not be a big issue in applying community policing philosophy. First, community policing stresses building a strong partnership between police and community, which means also strengthening community's ability and capability to contribute to community safety. So I agree that the decentralized structure could provide a better environment for the community policing itself, but at the same time, there are some barriers exist. For example, scholars point out that measuring the effectiveness of community policing is relatively difficult because there is a lack of uniform guideline in applying community policing philosophy into policing practices. So in this regard, centralized structure could provide a better environment, as like Dr. Sung-Hilan explained. Therefore, I think it is very important to focus more on how to establish proper communication channel with the community members and how to reach out to the various population in the police jurisdictions. That's going to be the first priority when we consider to apply community policing into police practices. And how to reach out to the various population in the police jurisdiction is important, and what our contents will be dealt within the community policing program is very important too. Based on my research, my recent research, I found that providing crime preventive information to the resident at the community policing based programs increased resident collective efficacy, which indicates social cohesion effort to community safety. And under this pandemic situations, pandemic circumstances, it is also very important for the police to establish a non-contact way of communication with the community using technology such as using mobile app in order to effectively deliver the information contributing to strengthening resident social cohesion effort. Thank you.
Dr. Lee probably pinpoint that community policing is not a matter of structure, but it's a matter of implementation, right? So, and yeah, I know there are so many other kind of specialists who have some expertise in this area. So if you can add in any comment, I'm more than happy to. David Kim, Professor Kim, do you have any idea about the first question?
So just based on the first question, based on the experience of the U.S., Korea should be careful in transitioning from a centralized to a decentralized system. There's both positive and negative aspects of a centralized system and a decentralized system. Things to look at are like the crime issues, how policing will be implemented, what are the police-community relations. In a centralized system, the funding allocations are it transitions fluidly compared to a decentralized system. And so just looking at different pros and cons on each type of system should be carefully analyzed before transitioning from a centralized to a decentralized system.
Okay, thank you. And do you want to comment anything from Dr. Lim?
Yeah, basically, when I didn't study the policing, I was agree with having a decentralized policing in Korea because I didn't know anything but since I have been living in the United States about 20 years, so learning about the decentralized system and its problem issues, and also the related to the community-oriented policing, seems like under the decentralized policing system, community policing looks better work. But actually, in the United States, the local agency told me that because they have a lack of manpowers, because they do not let the police officer to work with the committee member or talk with the committee member during their patrol hours. So even they tried to, they couldn't. And also, initially, they had no idea about what the community policing is, how to do it. So now they try to do it, but the lack of resources, manpower, and also they are considering about a favoritism. Because if they are close to the one particular community member, seems like, oh, I provide a favoritism to the the citizen. So that's the one aspect from the local police. Also, the other thing is, I'm not sure whether, I guess our panelists already knew how many local agencies we do have in the United States. If I give a little bit of the statistic is, we do have 13,580 local police department plus 3,100 sheriff's department, 1,733 special jurisdiction agency, and 638 other agencies, primarily constable, the county level, the law enforcement agency. So as you could see, there's a huge problem of the fragmentation, lack of coordination, lack of communication. I'm sorry. So now I'm actually do not actually agree with changing the Korean national police system to the decentralized system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. As far as I know, U.S. system is much more diverse. There are so many different levels of law enforcement forces. Dr. Lim already mentioned, and the local police, state, county, federal, and even the special forces, park police, and that kind of diversity should be considered. At the same time, even as a kind of cultural background, the population composition, U.S. population is really, really diverse comparing to the Korean population. And also there are so many different cultures and different histories, different demand. That's why it can not perfectly, it might be kind of working fine here in the United States. But I don't know, the Korean situation is a little bit different, right? So when we consider to kind of adapting kind of municipal policing system in Korea, or even considering the community policing, okay, those kind of other factors, even the background factors, should be considered. That is kind of the one sense I can add. And another one is we should not interpret community policing as a kind of structure itself. the community policing is a kind of philosophy, practical implementation issues instead of kind of hardware itself. So if someone, including Korean government, is consider only focusing on only hardware itself, structure itself, there might be lots of issues. I believe we need to focus on putting more effort to kind of construct some software issues, the implementation programs, the community issues, communication issues. That kind of issues should be considered. That's my 2 cents. And do you want to add anything, Dr. Park? Do you have Insun Park? Do you have any comment on any of these questions?
I think the police researchers and experts in this room has already spoken many good points and wise comments. I would just add that if the decentralized system or the centralized system should be implemented in Korea, then it should incorporate the unique aspect of community structure that already exists in Korea, because we know the community structure is a bit different from America and what we see in Korean community. So the successful model of community policing should incorporate what's already what we know about the structure in the Korean community. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As a matter of time, so I better go to the next question. Thank you so much. We have discussed several issues about the community policing and the municipal policing system between in the United States and in Korea. But now I want to add some other bring some other issues. In these states, the police brutality and racism, Dr. Park already mentioned against racism against Asian, the American people, against minority groups have been a major concern since the inception of the policing history. But whatever the reason, in these days, these issues came out over the surface more frequently, right? So, if that's the case, why these issues are coming out over the surface, even if it has long history, and also under this situation, how do police can establish some police community relations better? I know it's a kind of challenging task, but in order to implement the policing or even community policing successfully, police community relations are really, really critical. But under this COVID-19 situation and also under this kind of serious tension between two parties, we have experienced lots of issues. So if you have any kind of idea about this, we can discuss this on a little bit. Can I toss this question to especially Dr. Insun Park? You already discussed about some racism. So if you add something, you can to answer this question first.
The police researchers in this room can probably speak to what the police can do to improve these circumstances. So I would like to speak a little bit about what the researchers can do to resolve this problem. I believe it should be a mutual effort from the criminal justice system and also from the community. And as I mentioned in the presentation, there's still a lack of understanding and a long way to go to educate the system. And I think this is something as researchers and scholars, we have both backgrounds in Korean community, we have understanding of the Korean culture, we have understanding about what the research says about effective strategy to improve the relationship between the system and the community. And I mentioned how the Asian community was referred as Oriental, which is a very outdated term, and it can be just an example, but it can symbolize a lack of understanding. And Dr. Kim asked about civil resources that's available, and that's an important inquiry. as what the scholars can do, because citizens sometimes rely on the community resources as opposed to the researchers, because the researchers are not the immediate resources that the citizens can rely on. But sometimes these community agencies can point to the strategies that are effective only in the short term. For example, they can discourage calling the police, and they can, without realizing, feed legal cynicism about the police system. But we scholars, we have knowledge about the literature, we can review empirical evidence, and as Dr. Lim pointed out, we can help if there's a good strategy and good policy, then we can help the implementation issues, and we can evaluate the policies. And we can also play a role in helping the community agencies as well, so that they can devise the support system that can actually work and that can actually work in the long term. And also Professor David Kim indicate that media can be a powerful tool, and we can also share research findings so that we can educate the people and we can educate the system at the same time.
Okay, thank you so much. In the meantime, I got a question from the audience. Some Dr. Chu asked, Dr. Park, you already mentioned about the kind of roles of kind of researchers. The question is, what KOSCA, we are the group of kind of researchers and practitioners, right? What KOSCA can do as an academic organization to help kind of Asian community, especially kind of against Asian American. Some Asian American might be kind of wrongfully convicted, accused during this COVID-19, right? So as an kind of academic kind of organization, how this KOSCA can help our community? You already mentioned some, but can you add some extra information about that? Can you put some more opinions about that?
Yes, because while I was preparing for this presentation, I myself learned a lot about the history of Asian American population becoming finally the legitimate citizens of America. And we should ask ourselves if we ourselves are free from racism and internalized racism that's systematically happening in this country. So we can educate ourselves as researchers about how we can unlearn anti-Blackness and internalize racism, and we have to know the local resources that can advocate Asian American populations as researchers who can advocate Korean Americans and other Asian population in the United States.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Jason,
Yeah, can I add some viewpoint to the questions from Dr. Chu? I think that as a KOSCA as a academic organizations, I think that we need to educate ourselves regarding cultures, also resources, but also we need to, I guess, I think we need to engage in communication with the community too. So we should be speak up for them. If they have a problem, we should speak up for them, and then let them society know that, American society know that our Asian population having trouble with the under this pandemic situation. So I think that academic organization, I guess we need to also should be established a communication channel with the Asian community.
I believe community engagement with even the Asian community is a kind of critical kind of task that we can do. If we can provide some kind of trainings or even education for kind of community members, including many Asians, including Korean, there might be another kind of solutions we can provide. Of course, there are so many ways to be imbibed as an academic organization we can do. Okay, all right. So since we have limited time, do you have any kind of comment on this topic? Otherwise, I have another question.
I do want to contribute a little bit. I think as a KOSCA organization, I think we could focus more on how Asian populations are impacted empirically. So do more research on the Asian population with the community members and in policing in general, because more of our focus in journals and articles are policing and race, for example, white and black individuals, how they have a different perception of the police. However, there's limited research on Asian Americans and their role and perception in policing. So just having more research conducted in that area, I think would help.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have only 5 minutes, so I have another question, last question. We already discussed about police reform. The President Trump signed the executive order for police reform in June, and most states, in the United States already passed certain legislation. Okay, so this reform, the police reform, is a major issue here in the United States in our criminal justice area. In this case, what are these kind of driving forces of this major movement, and also some resistance force? What are the kind of obstacles to go further to make our system better by using police reform? Probably I better toss this question to Dr. Hae-young Lim first. Then if you have further comment, you can add anytime.
Okay. Driving force might be COVID-19 pandemic, and then several killing by the police this year. But killing by the police is not something the unusual stuff. Like every year we heard about it, and the serious case, and the police department actually provide a huge settlement money on it. But I guess the American citizen is very skeptical on police reform, although they hope it's a systematic changes, especially on the systemic discrimination and intersectionality and the police use of excessive force. But you have to know this part, because since 1960, they have been a police reform. But currently, we feel like we are living in the same age like 1960. If we consider the police practices, so they say reform. There was no reform has been. Nothing was working. Although police put the last effort to change and then kind of to provide a better service and to move forward the more professionalism, right? But one thing I found as a policing scholar was when federal or state put the last effort resources for police reform, those resources go to the usually metropolitan and large police department, not go to the middle or very small police agency. So those kinds of changes, like as I mentioned, there's a kind of 10 area the police reform movement campaign recommend. But fact is, like a middle, especially middle to very small, we do have many very small police agency. Even there is a police agency one man operated. So it is not easy to get those recommendations in the small agency, and then it's hard to find the resources for that. So if we want to have a real reform, we should more focus on the rural policing too. Thank you.
All right. So any other panelists?
Actually, I am researching the transition of Korean police system now. Your comments and many advice would be very helpful for my research. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody who can add more comment on this police reform? I know, many police reform, kind of initiated from the top, criminal justice sometimes, but I feel like, the police reform should be done through mutual effort with mutual understanding. Okay, so we can try policy reform from the criminal justice first, but at the same time, community organizations, community members should be, how can I say, they should revitalize their own community, then create kind of better community relations. Otherwise, policy reform is just policy reform from the top all the time. Okay, I know there are so many topics to discuss. I know you have so many ideas and opinions, but as a matter of time, right now, we need to conclude this session. Sorry about that. I really appreciate everyone's kind of contribution and insight on this kind of great, interesting topic, COVID-19 and policing in the United States. I really hope this session gave an opportunity to think about certain current issues and concerns in policing on the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much. Probably, we'll see you around. As an announcement, there will be another session from 10:40 after 10-minute break, hosted by Division of Cyber Criminology. Probably we can see over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.